Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about my fundamental beliefs and I guess strategies when it comes to upgrading gears and how to do so efficiently. And this video is going to be geared towards specifically newer players who are probably just coming back to the game over an extended break, haven't ever played an MMO before, don't really know what it's like to upgrade and progress through time instead of just learning as the game goes. Because, most games like League of Legends nowadays, you can play it and eventually you'll get the hang of it. But in terms of upgrading, even if you play, you still kind of have to have an idea of what you're supposed to be doing in order to improve your damage the most efficiently. So, without further ado, we'll start off with, I guess, one of the biggest things that I want to just throw out there because I know that a lot of people are stuck on this because I see it firsthand, especially when people ask me what they should do. So I'm going to switch over to MS Paint real quick so you guys can see. As you can see here on from left to right, we have the Utgard weapon, the Fafnir, the Absolab, and the Arcane Umbra weapon. Now, I have these in a specific order because from left to right is pretty much how you're going to make your progression through the game. As you progress, you're going to probably first obtain your Utgard weapon because it drops from monsters at level 150 and it's pretty easily obtainable. Then at some point, you'll be strong enough, whether it's in a party or you have someone who's kind enough to carry you, you'll acquire your Fafnir weapon. And now, after you acquire that, the thing is, the next gap is going to be significantly harder because most people, unless you have friends, but chances are if you're new to this game, especially if you're on reboot, you won't have the connections that you more or less need in order to get carried on to get your Absolab weapon. So that brings up the topic, how do you get strong enough, right? And there's definitely different methods to doing so, and I think there's these different methods work better in the different servers. So for Reboot specifically, you cannot buy your items straight off the bat from anybody, and nobody can really give you one. The best that they can do is take you through a boss, and then from there on, you have to do the work yourself in order to obtain the weapon, right? So for those of you who don't know, the Absolab weapon is pretty much the first weapon in the game where even once you have the boss material that comes from it, you still have to do a daily quest in order to get a second, I guess, kind of so raw material that you need in order to eventually get the weapon. Which is why there's that gap, right? Not only do you have to be able to kill that boss, but if someone takes you, you also have to reassure yourself that you're strong enough in order to do those quests that allow you to actually obtain the item. And then last but not least is the Arcane Umbra weapon. Hands down the best weapon that you can obtain that is not the Genesis weapon as of today's date of May 10th. Now I say this because obviously the liberated Genesis weapon's insane, it has buffs and all that stuff, but the Arcane Umbra weapon is pretty much unrivaled in terms of raw stat because it is, uh, sorry, it is a level 200 weapon, right? So it can have the best flames, the best potentials, and so on. Now, where am I going with this, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, the Utgard weapon is the first weapon you're going to obtain. Now, once you obtain it, your next goal obviously is to get the Fafnir weapon. Now, I think and I personally believe it's best if you work your way up. A lot of people say that it's impossible to get strong enough to do CRA by yourself, but party play makes it really easy. Instead of having one person who's strong enough to kill it, what if you had six people who are all less strong, but cumulatively were equally as strong to that one person, right? And you can find these people through looking for guilds, especially in Reboot when guilds are always recruiting through Smegas, through Maple Central, the Discord server, and etc. So there's a lot of ample opportunity to find the community, find the people you need to do X, Y, and Z. But I think it's difficult because you kind of are putting yourself out there by asking to join a guild or whatnot, and whether or not they accept you, I guess there's that. But most people are really open, especially in Reboot. So I really recommend you do so. So that journey kind of goes through, right? The first thing is, in order to get from the first milestone to the next, you have to reach some damage limit, some damage threshold, let's say. And I think the biggest thing about there is people don't know what items they need, what's good, what's bad, and what's not. And I think that's why you can see here that I made a purple line here just to represent epic potential, because epic potential scrolls are really hard to get. But that pretty much represents like the four tiers, right? Endgame, you'll be legendary, you'll have Arcane Umbra, you'll have really high Star Force, and even if not, you probably will still be legendary potential on most of your uh, quote unquote end game gears. Now, if you don't know what your end game gears are, I have a video highlighting that's mostly accurate, and I'll link it down below in case y'all want to catch up. But now I'll explain, I guess, my whole ideology part of it. So, I basically got the idea from this video when I was talking to a friend, my guild leader in Aurora. His name is Andrew. Shoutouts to him and shoutouts to Boundless because we love Maplestory. Um, but yeah, one of our guildies was thinking about funding again, and he did, and he ended up getting some gears, and we were discussing pretty much for a while whether or not it was fundamentally correct to buy gears that would be considered end game, so Arcane Umbra, Absolab, versus using gears that aren't technically best in slot, but still can rival those items in terms of stats. So what we were looking at specifically was whether or not he should spend more to get the better gears at a worse stat, or spend less to get more stats, um, spend less for more stats, um, but have gear that would be harder to sell later on if he decided to quit the character. Now, when it comes to that, right, say you have some lump of money, and I guess for this case, we can say in Reboot, you have 10 billion mesos. Now, 10 billion mesos is probably good enough to get your character, I would say, to all legendary potential and maybe one or two lines of stat, especially during double miracle time. Obviously, cubing is going to be based off of your luck, but I can say here that I'm pretty sure without a doubt you could get every item to unique from epic with 10 billion mesos and cube for some line of stat. Okay, maybe not legendary. Legendary is for double miracle time only. And if you don't know what that is, let's hope you do because it's one of the best events in the game. I digress. But so basically, say you have this lump of money, right? You could, if you already had, say, your Fafnir weapon, drop 10 billion mesos on that, making it the best possible that you can with that 10 billion. And chances are with 10 billion, you'll get it to legendary. You'll get it to 2 to 3 line attack, and 1 line of boss or IED potential. And then chances are you'll probably get it to 17 stars as well. Now, that's all good because you know you won't be replacing that item for a very long amount of time. But let's think about this. The first 5 to 10, oh, where is it? Oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry, I can't find the brush. Okay, so say the first 5 to 10 stars on an item, I believe, now I might be wrong, but for the purpose of this video, we'll just say hypothetically, uh, not the first, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Wow, my mind just blank. Okay, for the first 10 stars, right? Let's say each scroll gives it 5 attack and 3 all stat. I think this is actually a little generous, but I think it might be pretty close to what it actually is, but it's whatever. This will be very cheap, right? You could probably do this in 5 mil mesos, 5 to 10 mil mesos, right? Now, that's fine. You get 5 attack, 3 all stat, 10 times 50 attack, and 30 all stat. Now, say you were to go from the next threshold, 10 to 15 stars. 10, so 15, right? 10 to 15, and this is from 0 to 10. 10 to 15 stars is going to cost you significantly more because the rates have decreased significantly. So if you guys don't know, 0 to 10 is about 95% from 0 all the way to like 50% at 10, and then all the way up to 15, I think it goes to 35%. Now, passing this is going to get harder, especially because this costs more, but say this gives the same or roughly the same, right? I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it gives a little more, say 6 attack. Now, this is just all demonstrate a point, right? So these might not be real values. And this could cost anywhere from 500 to 2 bill. As you can see here, you're getting, I guess, it's the returns on your investment have diminished, right? The first 0 to 10, you gain 50 attack and 30 all stat, and the next 500 to 2 billion mesas, you're getting 30 attack to 24 all stat. And that's pretty much the whole idea of the video, right? You can, of course, always shoot. Ow, I just poked myself. But you can always shoot to get the best on one item. But if you distribute it with this understanding that there's a system where it gets more and more expensive the more you decide to do it, and your odds of getting that success and getting those stats decreases, right? So you also have to keep in mind from 10 to 15 stars, if you fail a Star Force, you lose stat. And that's also money you're paying for. And now, if we want to talk about the final bits from 15, not the final bits, it's close, but from 15 to 17 star, which is about the next, I guess, damage bracket, right? This can cost, I mean, this one gives you like 8 to 9 attack and 10 to 13 all stats per. I'm so sorry that is so illegible, but I'll just say all for all. Just know that all and all stats are the same thing. And this, depending on whether or not there's an event, depending on whether or not you need to safeguard, this could cost you, that's a 300 mil, um, 300 mil to up to 6 or 7 billion. Now, this is definitely required, and it all also depends on RNG, your luck, not like your actual like stat luck, but like your how lucky you are as a player, right? And again, these are all hypothetical numbers, but the costs are based off of experience of what I've done and how lucky I've been. So it really depends, right? So it could go way up or way down, and it also depends on the item you're using. So say from these 2 stars, I get 16 to 18 attack, 20 to 26 all stat. Now, would it be more worth it to enhance this one item all the way to 17 stars and spend roughly, say, do the worst case scenario, right? Chances are it'll cost from here, perhaps it might cost 8 billion mesas. That's a bit of a stretch in my honest opinion, but it is possible if you're really unlucky and if you have a really, really valuable item. Now, say you could spend that money on 14 items and get 0 to 10 stars each, right? Back up here to 5 to 10 mil. That'll cost you 70 to 140 million mesos, and you will get, I guess this is wrong because these don't apply to armor items, right? So on armor items, you get 2 to 3 all stat per, all the way up to 10 stars. You get what is that? 20, no, it's 10 plus 50, 25 all stats distributed across 14 items, 250, 350 all stats, right? That is going to be better than if you're trying billions of mesos on an item to get 10 to 15 star. I guess I shouldn't have used a weapon because you only have one weapon, but the fundamental ideology stays the same, right? Especially when you're talking about armors. So it's like the whole idea is based off of what you want to distribute your money on. You can put all of it into one item to make that one the best and then not have to worry about upgrading it later, or you can upgrade your items slowly over a period of time, uh, and give them and make them well-rounded. And by well-rounded, I mean like making sure each one has at least 10 star forts, at least has epic potential, 6%, 9% stat, and then because that's going to be the cheapest option, right? The further you enhance and the further you progress, the more expensive it's going to be, which is why you start at the very bottom and make sure it's well-rounded so that all your items share that in I will say relatively inexpensive boost that you can give it. Now, for those of you who are kind of confused by this, let me put it into another words. Say I were to give you $1,000, right? And I said go buy yourself an outfit. Would you go and spend that $1,000 on one item from, say, what, Louis Vuitton, and then have nothing else? Or would you go to less expensive stores, let's say, ooh, I don't even know, Zara, H&M, and buy multiple pieces of clothing and get more out of it for that $1,000, right? So I think, especially me, I would go the option of getting more for my money, especially because I don't really care um, about the brand, but I mean, this is a hypothetical situation, right? Um, it's like, what would you do if you had to clothe your entire body, right? You wouldn't spend $950 at Louis Vuitton and then go to a thrift store and get the rest of your outfit with 50 bucks. I mean, maybe you would, that's up to you, but I think most people would rather go to stores that fit into the budget range and then get things that can all work together, um, so that it works out in the end with your budget. Now you can apply the same thing to Maplestory, right? I'm gonna go back to Maplestory for a second so you can see my equipment window. You see here there's 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, 19, and 20 slots of items that you can get that are potential or whatever, right? If I were to spend, say, 500k in executing one item, yes, I'll probably get it to 30% stat, main potential. I'll use this pendant for reference. Yes, I'll probably get these stats if I were to make it with 500k in X. I could probably cube for these stats and then get the Star Force on it. That's very possible. Now, if I were to take that 500k in X and rather spend it across all of my items, I could probably get them all to unique and roll at least 15% stat on them. Now, over 20 items, 15% stat each, that's 300% versus the 27, 39% that I have here, right? And that's the idea behind upgrading. You don't want or necessarily need to upgrade one item to make it the best in end game, especially when you can get um, more stat or more gain elsewhere for a cheaper cost. And I think once you understand and apply that knowledge to when you're upgrading gears, um, it'll help you out with understanding what you're supposed to do with your mesos and how you're supposed to fund your character, right? And now this also has to play into a whole question about what items are the best for you, what items are end game, and like I said, I did make a video on what items you should have your for your end game. So there's a whole lot more of information that goes into it, but overall, basically you're going to be applying this idea of upgrading many items instead of one, and doing that slowly over time, right? Another example of this is when people Star Force Arcane Umbra weapons in Reboot. So if you, those of you who don't know, Arcane Umbra items are pretty much the end game gear for most players, right? Actually, no, it is the end game gear for, yeah. That's what it's considered as. So people in Reboot, if you haven't ever watched the streams before, will have multiple equips. Say for example, they have all three of the cape, the glove, and the shoe, right? They wouldn't just throw in all their money and waited for an item to hit 22 star before moving to the next. Now what they would do is with something that we call Star Force Roulette, where you go one by one through each of the weapons and getting them up 1 star at a time. And if that doesn't make any sense, it's, for example, oh, I don't want to show off my cape. If you were to have this pendant at 10 stars or 17 stars, just imagine it's at 17. I would get this one and roll it to 18, and then I would go to my next item and get that to 18, and then go back to get it to 19, and once it does, I'll go to the next one and get that to 19, right? So you see this idea is still applied later on in the game, um, and it's pretty much used everywhere because it makes your upgrading efficient. You don't want one item to be the best when you could have multiple items that are slightly worse, maybe significantly, but will give you better range overall. And that's pretty much going to be the consideration that you guys are going to have to use when you're upgrading. And then you kind of have to make your own judgment too. But yeah, that's going to conclude this video. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, remember to like and subscribe. And as always, happy mapling, guys. Stay safe.